Hi, my name is Max, and I'm a rolfer at the Way of the Elbow. I don't know who will in the end see this video, but I imagine that nobody will see this video whose life hasn't been significantly changed by the current corona pandemic that we're all experiencing. And one thing that change has meant for me is making videos like this one in order to reach out and maintain communication with my patients and clients. In this video I would like to say a few words about three different principles or themes in Rolfing that are very basic and very foundational to the practice itself. I'll list the three principles, the three themes, and then I'll go into each one in a little bit more depth. The first one is what I will call adaptability. The second is what I will call gravity. The third is what I will call holism. So now I'll explain each of those in a little bit more depth. By adaptability, I mean the idea that our bodies are not just objects, or they're not just bodies of material. They're rather much more like patterns or forms that are cycling through material. We can imagine every breath we take, really, we're exchanging matter or particles with the environment, right? We often picture, in a sort of naive way, we picture our bodies as sort of self-enclosed objects, and that's just, it's so far from the truth and from reality. That has profound and significant implications if we really take in the idea that our bodies are not just chunks of material. Often it's a very novel idea for people if they when they're first coming in for Rolfing. The idea that there are things that we can do, ways that we live and move and be, that will substantially influence our bodies, even down to the physical structure of our bodies, the ways we live and move. These can have profound changes. That follows, though, straightforwardly from the fact of the matter, which is that our bodies are not just chunks of stuff. They are rather living, breathing patterns. That's all that I will say on that theme for the moment, and instead I'll move on to the second theme, and that is what I've called gravity. I'll try to explain what I mean. Ida Rolf is famous for saying that in the integrated body, or in the Rolfed body, in the integrated body, that gravity is the therapist. Gravity is the therapist. That might strike some people as almost paradoxical, in the sense that often we have the feeling that gravity is more of an adversary than a therapist, and that we go to a therapist maybe precisely because gravity has become our enemy, become our adversary. We go to the therapist to escape the kind of the feeling of gravity, the weight, this feeling that gravity is bearing down on our structures. But let me try to offer a different perspective, and that's that in fact the real problems are the ones that we don't know about, we don't experience, and gravity in some ways can awaken us, and gravity will always give it to us straight, and it will tell us when we are out of alignment, right? But we have to learn the language that it speaks, and the language that our body translates this kind of physics of gravity. Our body translates that into a language that is intelligible to us, and that's that can be a feeling of either ease, right, almost lift, buoyancy, or on the contrary, it can be the sense of weight or just heaviness or dullness, right? Gravity, though, it will immediately communicate to us when we're out of alignment with physics. Is one way to think about it. I often picture the image of the way that a person would calibrate a compass. Calibrate a compass in order for the compass to work, right? For the compass to function, what it's for. And similarly, I picture that we can align ourselves with, it's not a magnetic field in this case, but it's a field of gravitation. And this is so that our bodies can function. And again, in a similar way to the first principle, the notion of adaptability, Rolfing can help us embody and experience these principles. So the one goal of Rolfing, one way to conceptualize the goal of Rolfing is to help us enter into these lived experiences of the principles that I'm attempting to describe, or attempting to enumerate. There are of course many other principles. None of these principles is meant to be exclusive or exhaustive. It's rather approaching the Rolfing project from one aspect. But with that, I will move on to the third theme that I set forth at the very beginning of this video, and that is the theme that I called holism. Now, just like any of these themes, a lot could be said about holism, and I'll try to limit it to something more or less manageable. What I mean by holism is it would be in some ways antithetical to the idea of our bodies being made of parts, components. By contrast, if you picture something mechanical, like a lawnmower, this is something that's made of parts, components. And my experience is that often we entertain a sort of implicit conception of what kind of thing our bodies are. This is related to the first theme that I spoke about in this video, the theme of adaptability, which is really a theme of kind of exchange with the environment, fluidity. This idea that the way we tacitly entertain an idea of our bodies as though they're anatomical, like they're made of parts, like we have parts of our skeleton, parts of our various systems, connective systems. This is helpful, but I think it can actually lead us away from the truth of things and from the reality of our bodies if we take the anatomical conception too far, the notion that the body is divisible into separate components in the way that any kind of non-living thing is. And a lawnmower, for example, is what the example that I've already introduced in this video. If we compare a lawnmower to a living thing like a human being, then it will be very obvious that there's a really essential difference. It's not just that they're different shapes and they do different things. No, they're different kinds of beings. And one way to try to get at what is the real crux of the difference is to think about what makes all of the components in a lawnmower, because the spark plug and the fuse and the handle and the wheels, etc., those by themselves are not a lawnmower. Something has to happen, they have to be put together in the proper way for them to become a lawnmower, right? And if we just on one side compare the idea that makes those parts into a lawnmower, where does that idea come from? If we compare that to a living being on the other side, then I think this is a way to disclose and make manifest the really fundamental difference between the living thing and the lawnmower. It's that in the lawnmower, the parts precede the whole, and the whole is in some way I mean, it's an idea in some inventor's mind. The whole is somehow imposed onto the parts from outside, stamped onto the parts in some way, metaphorically, figuratively, but it's pointing to something real, which is that somebody has to assemble those parts to make the lawnmower. By contrast, if we think about our own bodies and all living things, it could not be more different. In our bodies, the whole always precedes the parts, and in fact, we shouldn't even. It's misleading to call them parts in some way, because they're more like, maybe a better word, because by using different words, it can help us keep the conceptual differentiations, which are so important for understanding. We can call them not parts, we can call them moments, and this could be much more useful than thinking of parts in our bodies. Think about moments in our bodies, and it immediately evokes the image of something in time, almost like music, and in the same way that, or speech, as I'm speaking right now, a single word or a single sound that comes from my lips, it doesn't mean anything, except in the context of the meaning that I'm trying to express. And I'll close the video with that thought, but just invite anybody who happens to watch this video to just contemplate what that might mean, to think of our bodies as not made of parts but made of moments. Right? In other words, they are somehow, every moment in our body is essentially related to the whole of our bodies. With that, I will conclude the video. I've set forth three more or less fundamental principles of Rolfing. These I called adaptability, gravity, and holism, and I tried to explain what I mean by those terms. And I hope something that I said can inspire viewers, anyone who's watching this video, to think a little bit further into these things. And I hope to see you someday, once the pandemic calms down, of course. And until next time, I wish everybody the very best, and farewell from the way of the elbow.